Kevin, thank you for doing this. You look great. I'm really happy to have you here. You have so much knowledge and experience, and I just appreciate this very much. I wanted to just go ahead and start by asking you to share your name and your title and a little bit about MDR.
Judy, thank you for having me today. I'm Kevin Shrake, and I'm the Executive Vice President, Chief Operating Officer of MDR. And MDR is a resource capability company. We go out into the marketplace, inside and outside of healthcare, and we find best practices, and we bring those best practices to solve business problems for our clients. And actually, that's how you and I found each other. We believe you're a best practice in the topical area that we're going to discuss today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be part of the fold. You did what at a 500-bed community hospital? You came into that role because they kind of gave you, they said, hey, we know somebody who will come at this, and they gave you a hospital that had a $28 million debt. You made it a priority to design your leadership in a way that ignited the light in each of the 3,000 employees. And so you're the proof that it can be done on a large scale. So you implemented what we call a human systems. Tell us why this kind of investment is mandatory for companies to invest in.
Judy, thanks for that summary. And gee, it made it sound awful easy, but it wasn't easy. But I will say that that $28 million turnaround happened in actually about 18 months. And there's a lot of different ways to handle that. What you traditionally see happening in the industry is a lot of what I call slash and burn approach, which people come in, they see they've got to get $28 million, they cut all kinds of programs that might be vital to the community, and they look at how many positions can they delete in order to get to a balanced budget. And that's a very painful way of doing something, and it's quick. But what I see, Judy, when you're using that approach, you see it just total cyclical behavior, is that you have that impact for a period of time, and 2 years later, they're right back in the same position again. And somebody else has to come in and slash and burn. So I believe very, very strongly in that human system approach that you have, that the engagement of the people is what creates the endpoint, and it also what creates the sustainability. And so what I tried to do was get people together under one common bond, which was, we need to get together and talk about how we can save your jobs and how we can continue to create the environment that's going to provide the service to the community that they deserve. And so we went about that by recognizing the importance of every single person in the organization, regardless of whether they were sweeping the floors or in the C-suite or something in between. And that was a very powerful thing, because people want to be recognized, they're proud of what they do, and they like to know that they're making a contribution to the organization. So I knew all those things were important, but I thought, well, how am I really going to pull this off? And do I need help doing it? And I believe that you really need to get expert help to do this. And you need to make a financial investment in this process. And it's all about return on investment. If I can spend a few $100,000 to generate 20 or $30 million, I think any of us that were wanting to invest in something would be willing to do that. And the reason that you need this expert help, I think, is twofold. One is, even if you have the skills and the ability and the mindset to do this, it's too much. There's too many things going on that are going to pull your time away. In my case, I was running hospitals. So there's a lot of responsibilities there. Even if you're just even if you're a supervisor or a manager or really just a frontline employee, there's too many things to do that distract and pull you away. We don't know everything, and the thing that I've learned more and more over the years is the more I thought I knew, the little I really knew. And I really enjoy connecting with outside experts like you, who bring a totally different perspective and a structure to what it is that we want to accomplish.
Thank you, Kevin. And you certainly proved that investing in people really made a very measurable difference. So those are great stories.
You know, people think is not possible is they don't think it's possible to do a financial turnaround and improve employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction at the same time. And that's wrong. They
It
can
is
go
wrong.
hand in hand.
It's like the 1 minute mile. You broke the record, and now there's no more excuses for people to hold that idea that it's not possible. It really is. And part of the problem is that we incredibly underestimate the value and the initiative in other people. And so you're absolutely right. You believed in people. You believed that they wanted to be great. You brought that out in them. So Kevin, you told me that if you had had a Lifework system, the organization could have sustained positive change and continued to improve even after you left because of the structure that would have been put in place. Tell us about how you realized that by not being able to transfer responsibility to everyone, there was a bit of a loss for you.
Sustainability is incredibly important. And I knew that I had the ability to do a few things. I had the ability to recognize, engage people and get them excited. And perfect example of that is 1,000 people would show up at employee meetings. I don't think that's common. So there was something that we were doing there to really engage the people, but it was a little bit too much of kind of, I call it the Pied Piper effect. You know, if there were senior level managers that were kind of in the area helping promote and understand and remind people, it went pretty well. But what you really want to do is transfer that whole model and that whole responsibility process to each and every employee so that they can police themselves in the appropriate way. Yes. As a manager, you can't be everywhere every minute of the day, and you don't even want to try. But it's incredibly more effective if an employee is exhibiting some behavior that maybe needs corrected, for another employee to tap them on the shoulder and go, you know, that's not part of our core values. That's not part of our process. And here's why you need to do this a little bit differently. I've got a classic hospital story on that, Judy, is the ER was incredibly busy and they needed help. So they transferred a nurse from the medical surgical floor down to the ER to help them. 2 nurses met them at the door. One nurse said, "You're a med surg nurse. You don't work in the ER. What are you going to be able to do to help us?" Second nurse tapped the other one on the shoulder and said, "This is a registered nurse who came to help us. I bet you we can find something for them to do. And if we're nice to them, they might come back sometime." Perfect example. You know, that was so incredibly more powerful for that employee to police and hold that other employee accountable with that responsibility model than any campaign, any slogan, any poster, any meeting the CEO or a manager could put forward.
That takes a person that has the confidence to speak up. So sure, why do you think that it matters for everybody to have a common understanding of those values, of those concepts, and a way to have confidence that they can approach each other with a common language and tools?
People need to understand the difference between what's a traditional control model and a responsibility model. And so, Judy, you and I had the experience a few months back where we were talking with an organization that helped veterans get benefits. And they wanted to incentivize their people on a per case-by-case basis, that if every one of these people that you get to enroll, we're going to give you some sort of a reward or a bonus. And what you and I talked about was that's really the wrong way to reward, because that's a carrot and a stick kind of process. What you and I talked to them about was, why do you want to help these people? Well, you want to help them because they need help, they have a need, and they have benefits available to them that they may not know about. That's why we want to help them. Empower people with that responsibility of understanding why something needs to be done. They'll want to do it for that reason. Then as the organization flourishes, if you want to include them in some sort of organizational bonus that everybody benefits from, that's great. And so that's an example from an incentive process, but there's also an important situation of just knowing how to behave in the work environment and the work setting. And our customers are not just our our clients, they're also our coworkers.
Yeah.
If you need help from purchasing with a supply, you're their customer, they're your customer. And so you have to know how to appropriately interact in a way that is consistent and in a way that people appreciate and gives you the results that you're looking for, both internally, employee to employee, and externally, employee to the client.
Yes, and our belief is that people are and want to be great. And if they're not acting great, it's because they haven't been given the tools, the concepts, the systems to help them operate in a way where they can be great. I think a lot of people want to be effective, but they don't want to be mean. And so having that common language and tools kind of takes the fear out of the problems that people have together. So why do you see the importance of having formal learning about how to address frustrations, how to stop gossip, how to help people define their own purpose and values, and how to recognize on a regular basis that somebody's going to sit down with them and mentor them every month so that they're able to talk about whether they're able to manage their relationships, their productivity, and their engagement?
Judy, what do we do in life to get better? We hire experts and people that help us, that have structure and have process and have capabilities. And so it's not unusual for us to hire a golf coach if we want to be a good golfer, or to hire a fitness instructor if we want to be physically fit, a financial advisor if we want to be financially successful. So why not have somebody who's an expert that can help really teach you the nuts and bolts of communication skills and interaction and a consistent set of core values that you fall back on? It just makes perfect sense to me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do think a lot of people think they're already supposed to know how to do that. And so they're relieved when we can bring in a set of training classes that teach them things that they haven't been taught.
Let's use the golf example. If you go out and golf and practice golf, and you practice for hours and you practice it wrong, all you're doing is conditioning your muscle memory to do something wrong. If somebody practices how they communicate with somebody in a controlling or an ineffective or an abusive way, they're going to continue to do it for the most part.
Absolutely. So there's a 71% disengagement in the United States workforce, and that puts at risk over $1 million. And that's like a bakery that has a cheesecake that's 3/4 moldy, and they're going to lose 3/4 of their profit. What most leaders do is what you said, slash and burn, where they do some form of cutting off the moldy part, and they try to sell the quarter piece that's left over. We know that changing the conditions would prevent the entire loss. A lot of business owners and executives are feeling the effects of this changing world. And while they hear about new ways to operate, they don't realize how broken things really are. So they don't really want to or look at seriously adopting a system that could powerfully transform their company. So that old school thinking, those limited beliefs, and those outdated methods are their default. What would you say to them, Kevin?
I believe the statistics, absolutely. And I love your moldy cheesecake example, because if you look at that cheesecake and there's mold on a slice, pretty soon the slice next to it gets moldy too. And it continues and continues. And it's the same place when in the workplace. I think life is a bell-shaped curve. Okay, I think life is a bell-shaped curve. And then the front part of that curve, you have that 29% of engaged employees that you really don't have to do too much with. You just need to kind of tuck point them and move them in the right direction and pretty much get out of their way, let them do what they do. But then you have all of the 71% disengaged employees, and you and I have talked about another statistic. Of those disengaged employees, about 16% of those are on the other end of that bell-shaped curve and are, I'm going to call them the toxic disengaged. And so what I've always felt was important is we invite everyone to come along. The train is leaving the station. Here's what we're doing and why. And we want you to be a part of it. And your job as a manager or a leader is to try to pull as many of those disengaged employees into the engaged space.
Okay. So Kevin, you know that a lot of companies right now are really suffering a lot of pain. A common example is the struggle that they're having with the millennial employees. I've heard more than one time from people, I'll never hire a millennial again. And our goal is to eliminate all of the us against them dynamics, not only toward millennials, but toward all kinds of differences where people just are uncomfortable with even the differences. So what can you say to help people recognize that the problems they're having are systemic, and then that they have a need to focus on implementing healthy human systems rather than the judging, the blaming, and the throwing away of people?
Well, you can tell by the fact that I can't hear, I can't see, and I got all these wrinkles that I'm not a millennial, that I'm a baby boomer. And so I appreciate what everybody brings to the table. And I think that's part of what your system creates, is that environment, is that everybody has something of value to add. And I've used the example before, is that if you want to know how to, fix your DVD player at home, ask an 8-year-old. They know how to do it. You might not know. And then with, the battle with the millennials is who's right. All of us baby boomers, we've all been about the workplace and, working 12 hours a day and, never calling in sick and not caring whether you take a vacation. And the millennials feel differently about that. They believe more in life balance and time off and recharging their battery and a variety of things. I think is actually pretty healthy. So I don't know who's got it right. So rather than have that conflict between the two because you're different, you need to understand, have a process that allows you to understand them better, and so that you can both make a contribution.
One of the things you're saying here is that rather than focus on where people don't have enough, you always focus on where they have something to offer. So I really appreciate you saying that, because that's what our systems are geared to do, is help people to start to believe in the goodness of each other and actually know how to mine that. You work with a pool of current and veteran CEOs. You understand the concerns that they're facing. Like some of them have thousands of people like you did, and they have multiple divisions, and they have rapid changes and people working from all different kinds of locations. So as a former CEO, what would you say to help existing CEOs?
Employees are attracted to your organization because of the work environment that you create for them. It's been shown over and over in studies that people leave organizations for a variety of reasons, and sometimes it's money and benefits, but the majority of the time it's because of their work environment and the relationship with their immediate supervisor. That's the majority of the time. So if you put emphasis on that and you really believe it, and you make people believe that you have their best interest in heart, they're going to want to stay, and they're going to want their friends to come work with them.
So let me take that question a step further, Kevin. I know when you left that hospital, everything had turned around. What would have happened if you had invested in a system like ours and stayed there another 10 years to see that implemented? Can you tell me what you would have envisioned would have happened as a result of that?
Finances would have gotten incredibly better, and it would have been sustainable. And people don't really give credit to a bad work environment for how much it tears down your financial performance. Mm-hmm. So the easy things to measure, turnover rates. Okay? So if you've got a 25% turnover rate, what if it was 10? What would that do for the finances of the organization? I mean, you can pick a number on whatever study you want to use. And a lot of people say, well, it takes the person's annual salary or twice their annual salary or whatever to fill a position, turn it over. So you've got that scenario, the whole turnover scenario. But the other thing is when your employees are really engaged and they're happy, that gets transmitted to the clients, whether that's healthcare or an automotive industry or a school district or whatever, that gets transmitted. We are human beings, and we wear our emotions on our sleeves. and if you're not happy, people get that also. And so that allows people to understand and want to come to your organization. I was in a restaurant that there was a long line to the register to order, And I'm thinking, oh boy, this is going to be a long time. And, I wasn't feeling too good about the line. And all of a sudden, an employee comes down and she has cherry danishes on a plate. Would you like a cherry danish? Would you like a cherry danish? And all of a sudden, we were having a cherry danish. We were talking to each other in line. We were engaged. The environment was good. And boom, all of a sudden, there's the register. And I order, have lunch, and I leave. Well, I didn't leave that day talking about the long line there. I left that day talking about the environment that was created by that employee and by that organization that knew that was important. And if we do those kinds of things in our organization, the finances are better because turnover rate's lower, the customers are happier, you get repeat business, you don't have waste, people help each other. Classic example. You're doing a job and you decide to just flip stuff on the floor because somebody's working in environmental services, they're going to come clean it up. Well, if you have that respect with the model that you create for organizations, you won't flip that on the floor because Bill has to come sweep that up. It's not this faceless person, it's Bill, the janitor, that comes in and cleans up after me, and I'm going to make his life better. Well, the efficiencies that you gain from that behavior is incredible.
Yeah, Kevin, remember when we were at the VIP event, there was a manager there that said, when I went on maternity leave before Lifework Systems and came back, it was chaos. And when I came back after Lifework Systems, everything ran completely smoothly. Can you talk a little bit about that mid-level manager who actually needs more taken off their plate and how a system like that can actually impact them favorably?
His role is critical because I mentioned earlier that people often leave organizations because of a bad relationship with their manager. And so I'm going to give you an analogy of an organization I was in years ago. It was a 58 hospital system. And when I got there, they did an employee survey, and the survey results were number 58 out of 58 hospitals. They were dead last. Now, knowing me and knowing how important I think that whole satisfaction level is, how much that hurt me. But I'm not going to wear the results of that. That was just what it was when I got there. But in this sea of red, because we had it color coded, red's bad and yellow and green. In this sea of red on these scorecards, there was 2 columns that were all green. And I'm like, well, what's that column? They go, oh, that's the 6th floor ICU. Well, what about this green column? Oh, that's the 7th floor ICU. Judy runs that unit too. Wow. How in the world of a sea of red and horrible results can you have 2 great results? And the reason is that Judy, and it was actually her name, sorry to be using your name, Judy inherently knew how to do things that were different, that relates to the human system model that you use. And what we didn't have was the ability to understand what that was and replicate Judy to all of the other managers of the organization. And that's what I think you bring to the table in your process, is that you find the best of the best, you use the best solutions, and you replicate it across that whole management team. And that's where the missing link was.
So Kevin, talk to me a little bit more about how mid-level and upper management are all less burdened in a system where everybody picks up responsibility.
Your workload goes down, your stress level goes down, your comfort level goes up for a variety of reasons. You may have heard the term that 10% of the people take up 90% of a manager's time. And part of that is that toxic group of disengaged people that you either need to coach up or get rid of. But the other is just, some people are needier than others, and they're the black hole of emotional need, and they will suck the life from you as a manager. And what having a system in place does is allows everyone to know how to behave, how to act, and how to interact. And so there's not this constant scenario of the manager having to police that. and having all the stress of every single situation. It's almost like watching your kids play, and if mom or dad is out of sight, the kids kind of work things out. But if mom and dad are inside, it's like, Mom, Dad, you know what he did, you know? And so it's almost like a manager is in that situation sometimes. And I equate a manager's role in an organization that doesn't have a system like yours to going to work every day and being nibbled to death by a pack of ducks. Okay, not any one nibble will kill you, but the little cumulative effect of all those nibbles it'll take you down. And so I fully understand and appreciate that manager's comment about coming back from vacation and doing it with ease because the ship was running fine.
Yeah, and so one last question I would have, Kevin, is how do you think a manager feels when they know their ship is going to run just great without them on a given day? How is their fulfillment level higher or lower?
Well, I think there's a lot of pride in that. You know, you want your people to do well. It's, you know, the workplace is not a parent-child relationship. It shouldn't be that way, but I kind of equate it a lot of times to, you know, do you feel proud when your child does something? Of course. You know, I played sports and I did things, you know, that I thought I was proud of until I watched my own sons and now my grandson play sports, and I'm 100% more proud of anything that they're doing than anything that I ever personally did. And so I think managers find that same level of satisfaction. As a former CEO, I have a confession to make. I made some changes in the organization that were positive, but they weren't sustainable. And I found a Lifework system that I wish I would have had that would have created that specific model and that sustainability to you know, create success ongoing. I mean, my name is Kevin Shrake, and I'm a former hospital CEO. And today I spend my days locating, vetting, and implementing best practices for colleagues around the country, inside and outside of healthcare. And I have a confession to make. I've made some good changes in some organizations from a financial and a satisfaction level standpoint, but they weren't always sustainable after I left. And one of the best practices that we have found in the marketplace is Lifework system. And Judy Ryan, who has that expertise, has that system, has that process that I would have loved to have had and used to create that sustainability. Kevin Shrake, and I'm a longtime healthcare CEO. And one of the things that I truly believe is that we don't fully understand the impact financially on our companies for not having a great work environment. And I believe that that great work environment relates to the relationships of employees to each other and the employees to the client. Look at things like turnover rates. How much better would your organization be financially if your turnover rate was half of what it is today? How much better would your organization be financially if you had lower sick time? People call in sick for a variety of reasons, but in an organization where you really have a top-notch work environment, they don't call in sick because they know the impact that will have on their fellow coworker. And I had been in some organizations where I made some of those changes, but it really didn't have the formal process in place to really understand that and communicate it to each and every employee in the organization. And if I had, I know my organizations would have done even better financially. MDR, looking for best practices in the industry, has found Lifeworks systems and Judy Ryan as the solution to that problem that I had. And I would like to invite you to learn more about her and her program.
Kevin, this is great. Thank you.